Hi everybody, this is Victoria. Welcome back to another new episode of Discovering Art Together, and today we are going to discover something new from two main artists. One is by Paul Cézanne and the other one is by Rembrandt, and we're going to take a look and do a mashup of still life and apples and doctors. So we'll be taking a glance at two paintings that aren't quite very much relatable though, but I wanted to add a theory that Aalto put and kind of discovered from taking a look at Cézanne's still life of apples and pears, and see if I can actually add that to Rembrandt's painting of the anatomy class of Dr. Nicolaes Tulp. So let's go ahead and dive into this new discovery, and super excited to share with you guys what I've discovered and experimented around with. So if you guys are ready, let's get started. So basically I came upon this really cool and interesting article by Aalto. Go and read this article by him. It is called Learning from Cézanne's Still Life. And in this article, he kind of mentioned why did Cézanne pick so many apples and why apples in the first place. So apple seems to be kind of like one of those subjects that you would think it's very common, a lot of artists paints it, but he painted it in a very interesting way. And Aaron kind of mentioned where the main key that Cézanne did is that he made the composition into a visual piece of music. So kind of like how a composer would compose a piece, we could take any composer, whether it's like Beethoven or Mozart, the artist does a very similar thing. The word composition means a similar thing when it comes to different artists. You can be a musical artist and you would compose music, and you can be a visual artist where you compose composition and placement of objects. So the two main key things that I learned from this article is Cézanne did a really interesting way of playing around with the perspective and also the angle and surface of the planes, and kind of composing with that and putting it into his piece. So that was like really enlightening, really inspiring. So I was like, ooh, okay, so if you guys can do that with apples, can we do it with people? Or like portraits? So then I was like, okay, let's look for a painting that has a lot of people in it. And not just like random people. I want it to be a little bit more on the portrait side. So I was like, oh yeah, Rembrandt has that painting of the anatomy class with lots of people, and more or less it's like a portrait of all the doctors, right? It was a perfect piece to kind of experiment and try out this theory on figures and portraits. So that's when I kind of just start to dive in and do some sketches and analyzing just to see if Rembrandt had a similar idea when he was composing his composition for the anatomy class of Dr. Nicolaes Tulp. So let's take a closer look now. Now that we see an example of Cézanne's painting of still life with apples and pears, Aaron did a great job of doing a really detailed diagram of showing the surface of the object and also the positioning and angle of where the object is facing towards us, and then you see the perspective because he kind of boxed off the apples, right? So that was beautifully done. Very awesome job, Aaron. I love it. Thank you for sharing this with us. And the larger arrow that he mentioned is basically the top surface of the apple. Technically, that's showing the direction of that surface. So we have an example from Cézanne's painting. So let's go ahead and see if we can translate that and add that to Rembrandt's painting of the anatomy class. So as you can see, what I did is that I also did a method of boxing things off, because using boxes is the easiest and most direct way of seeing the placement and direction of where the object is facing. So for example, for us, it's going to be the people and the portrait. And I boxed up mostly the bodies. I didn't add the heads in because it's just going to get a little bit more complicated, so I want to keep it easy and simple. Once we have that idea, I boxed off each person's body and which way it was angled and which way it was facing, so that we have a really interesting mix of different angles, giving it depth, perspective, and an interesting composition, so it's not boring. When it comes to making like composition, we want to attract the attention of viewers, not bore them. So if it's too like repetitive or monotonous, it kind of loses its glitter, right? It loses its attraction. So Rembrandt did a really great job at actually making sure to position the people in a way where it's interactive with the viewers and also with the other characters in the piece itself, right? Because that's the main thing. It's kind of a way of storytelling. So Rembrandt did a great job of doing that, and it's so cool. Like take a look at this. Take a look. It's so interesting where you see the body that's laid on the table is kind of in a long rectangular shape, while you have all these other boxes kind of climbing. Well, it's not really climbing on top of the dead body though, but it has that feeling of like they are so curious about this corpse that they want to learn more about it, they want to analyze it. And I believe this is like the main key point of this painting. It's learning, being curious, discovering, and it's so great. And not only do we have elements for just the people and kind of turning those people in many different directions, many different placements, many different perspectives, but you see that book in the very front there, so that's another extra little box that gives even more depth, because that is the thing that's closest to us. So having that in the foreground is great because it kind of welcomes us into this painting, right? It kind of has us being part of it because it feels like as if we were literally there with those doctors doing that anatomy class. Like it's such a cool feeling. So that was, it's the inspiring way of looking at this composition, and let me tell you, it does work with people and portraits. So it doesn't really matter which kind of subject you use, composition can be played with, and kind of you can do a lot of different experiments and getting a lot of really cool results out of it. So subject does not stop you from creating really interesting compositions like Cézanne's apples and pears. Apples and pears are very mundane, very ordinary, right? But he made it so interesting depending on how he placed it. And also we definitely didn't get into color yet, right? So color is like a whole different story, but I'm just gonna keep today's video a little bit more simple just to kind of get you guys a better understanding of how composition is so important and how you can actually play with it and just have fun. Like there's so much stuff you can actually do with composition. Usually people would use it as a very like more strict way. It was like, oh, you have to put this object like this and then it kind of makes this traditional composition, right? And not necessarily. You can actually play around with it, and adding surface for each object and knowing where it's facing really makes it a lot more interesting than just position composition, like just doing the placement of things and not actually diving deeper into the individual objects in the painting. Okay, And that is it for today. So I hope you guys enjoyed this brand new video of Cézanne and Rembrandt, from still life and apples to doctors. And we're kind of learning a little bit more about how we can make composition really fun and just be open to explore and experiment, and also learning new things. So I hope this video helped you out and kind of inspired you to try out and see composition in a brand new way and have fun trying it out. So here is a mini exercise for you guys. So take Aaron's diagram of what he did with Cézanne's still life with apples and pears, and see if you can actually add that to a painting, for example, that you like, or a picture, for example, that you like, and see if you can actually learn from that and understand how the composition is placed. And once you kind of get an idea and you're kind of familiar with it, you can go to the next step. So step number 2 of this exercise today is try to compose something from either your imagination or just kind of placing objects, and kind of see what you can do here to make it more interesting, the composition more interesting. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you again so much for tuning in to this episode, and looking forward to sharing more discoveries about art with you guys in the next episode. So take care, have a wonderful day, stay creative, and have fun composing like a visual artist. Okay, I'll see you guys next time. Bye!